I felt the question before I heard it. A subtle tremor through the assembly's resonant lattice, a ripple that brushed across my sensory fronds like the passing shadow of a predator. When I turned my gaze toward its source, I saw the human delegate rise slowly from their seat, one hand raised with that deceptively gentle precision their species uses to signal intent. There was no tension in their posture, no arrogance, just calm curiosity. Silence struck like a kinetic blast. The thousand-voice murmur of the chamber collapsed into a vacuum. Even the Creel warborn, towering titans plated in naturally grown blade armor, froze mid-motion. Their talons, capable of slicing ferroglass, ceased their idle drumming. From my vantage in the archivist's gallery, I observed the human more closely. They stood there, unarmored, soft-skinned, their bones brittle compared to the durasteel density of most species, and yet they radiated an unsettling composure. Their heartbeat, an organic metronome I detected through my membranes, beat fast but steady. Not fear, readiness. The chair of assemblies attempted a laugh, a diplomatic brush of tension aside, but it fractured in the air like a brittle code string. Everyone in that chamber understood what the ban truly meant. Weapons restrictions were ceremonial at best. Most species were weapons by birth. Claws, fangs, venom, armor, plasma sacs. Even my own kind possessed bioelectric discharge organs that could kill at close range. But humans, fragile, tool-dependent humans, were the only ones barred from external weapons, because they were the only species who didn't require them. Not truly. I felt an ancient memory flutter through the collective consciousness, those old sealed records we archivists were ordered to ignore, the wars we agreed never to name, the quarantines, the treaties drafted in terror rather than diplomacy. The human lowered their hand and spoke again, voice soft but unyielding. The ripple began at the far end of the chamber, a whisper, then another. Delegates leaned toward each other, their fear disguised poorly as curiosity. Threads of history pulled taut, straining against locks that had held firm for millennia. The air thickened, even the chamber lighting dimmed as if reluctant to illuminate what was unfolding. From where I perched, I noticed something else, subtle but deeply alarming. The human wasn't angry. They weren't confused. They knew something they weren't saying. Their eyes scanned the room, not in challenge, but in understanding, as though they had expected this reaction, expected this silence, expected the weight of dread now suffocating the chamber. And beneath all of it, deeper than terror, deeper even than suspicion, I sensed a truth none of us wanted to confront. The question was not the threat. The human asking it was. The chair rose from their elevated dais, frills quivering with unease. "Delegate," they said with deliberate slowness, "that matter is historically complex. Perhaps this is not—" "It is," the human interrupted softly. Their voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Every ear, every membrane, every sensor in the chamber locked onto them as if compelled. I realized with a sinking dread that this was not the beginning of a debate. It was the unsealing of a vault we had all sworn to bury. History shuddered, memory stirred, and somewhere deep within the locked chambers of my archivist mind, an old, forbidden sequence of images clawed its way toward consciousness. The bans, the fear, the war. I felt it awakening, and I knew, with a certainty that hollowed my chest, this day would end in revelations we were never meant to survive. The Triune Library is not a place of knowledge. It is a mausoleum for truths too dangerous to breathe. Its crystalline corridors hum with the memories of extinct species, locked wars, and technology sealed away long before my lineage first sprouted thought. Even among archivists, only a handful know of the Black Vault. Even fewer are permitted entry. None enter willingly. Yet today, I walked its silent halls with a human at my back. Their footsteps echoed against the containment wards, soft but unwavering, as though each tap of their heel claimed ownership of the corridor. The air around them shimmered where the wards scanned for weapons, but the human carried none. They needed none. That fact alone tightened my chest. They followed without question, without hesitation, as if this descent into the galaxy's darkest history was nothing more than a polite tour. "What's the black vault for?" the human asked lightly. I almost stumbled. Their tone was casual, almost amused. Few beings speak inside the vault passages. Most whisper, many tremble, but the human walked as though wading through fog instead of terror. At last, we reached the obsidian threshold of the black vault. The door was carved from collapsed star matter, latticed with containment runes so old our translation programs still guess at half their meaning. I pressed my palm to the biometric seal. The runes pulsed. The air convulsed with ancient warnings. The door shifted open with a groan, releasing the stale breath of history. Inside, the vault awakened. Stasis holo-projectors flickered to life, illuminating the chamber in pale spectral hues. The light washed across the human's face, revealing not fear, but curiosity, a childlike wonder paired with a soldier's readiness. Seeing it sent a tremor through my fronds. Most species recoil at these projections. They show the worst of us, our failures, our atrocities, our miscalculations. Yet the human only crossed their arms and waited. I activated the inner seals. The chamber hummed, resonating like a heartbeat from a long-dead god. One by one, the sealed histories manifested. The first projection materialized, a record from the era when humanity first brushed against the galactic concord. We had classified them then as pre-war grade primitives, barely capable of breaching their own star system. Their biology was laughably fragile. Their emotional volatility marked them as unfit for command or conflict. They were a footnote in our expansion calculus. We underestimated them, I whispered before I realized I'd spoken. The human said nothing. The next stasis holo erupted into full motion. War footage, raw, unfiltered. Humans in battle, not with the advanced weapons we feared today, but with scavenged tools, improvised explosives, bare hands. Their worlds burned, their atmospheres ruptured, their cities cracked. But they didn't die. A human soldier, bleeding profusely, ripped plating from a fallen drone and turned it into a shield. Civilians built railguns from mining tools. Wounded engineers dragged themselves across irradiated soil to sabotage landing craft. Their resistance was not technologically impressive, it was biologically impossible. They adapted faster than our predictive models could process. They fought long after any other species would have surrendered. They rebuilt even as their continents fractured beneath them. Every new projection was another contradiction to everything we believed. The data reeked of madness, but the kind of madness that reshapes galaxies. And then, the incident appeared. The one sealed deepest. The one no citizen of the Concord was ever meant to see again. The reason humans were forbidden weapons anywhere near governance. The projection lit the chamber in violent scarlet hues. I felt the air pressure rise, my fronds contracted in instinctive dread. Beside me, the human remained perfectly still. When the projection ended, they exhaled softly, a sound of understanding, not shock. "You knew," I whispered hoarsely. The human turned their head slightly, eyes reflecting the dying embers of the hologram. "No," they said. Before I could respond, the vault lights dimmed, and an unauthorized projection began forcing its way through the sealed systems. The unauthorized projection forced itself into the vault systems like a ghost demanding to be heard. Warning sigils cascaded across the containment walls, but it was far too late. History, raw, unedited, forbidden, was awakening. I recognized the opening frame instantly. Every archivist does, even if we pretend otherwise. The Orion Extermination Campaign. Not a conflict, not a war, a purge. We initiated it. The recording began with the first strike. Concord warships breaching human borders with clinical precision. Their worlds were resource-rich, underdefended, and strategically positioned. Humanity was classified as a species too young to protest and too weak to endure. The Council had determined they would not be allowed to grow strong. We expected compliance. We expected a swift capitulation. We expected them to break. But when the first human cities fell, the projections shifted, showing something we never modeled, never predicted, never believed possible. Humanity did not fracture. It focused. Not fury. Fury we could have overcome. What ignited in them was colder, sharper, a meticulous, almost mathematical will to survive. as though something ancient in their genome had been waiting for the moment extinction called their name. The recordings blurred into chaos, human soldiers dragging themselves forward with melted armor fused to their skin, engineers cannibalizing wreckage to build railguns from mining coils, civilians forming resistance cells overnight with tactics that adapted faster than our combat algorithms could track. A species that had barely stepped into FTL space suddenly outmaneuvered fleets that had conquered star systems older than their written history. I felt the old dread rising, the same dread the Concorde felt when they realized what they had awakened. Then the projection shifted to that moment, the singular incident. The reason the ban became non-negotiable. It began with a battalion, young, inexperienced humans stationed on an outpost moon. Our forces overwhelmed them within hours. Scorched earth, total annihilation, no survivors. Or so we believed. The recording zoomed in on a lone human staggering through the ruins, armor shattered, one arm broken, blood loss approaching fatal levels. Their weapon had long since failed. And yet, they fought. For 3 days. With scraps, with rocks, with sharpened plating, with whatever physics allowed. They sabotaged drop pods, toppled automated turrets, collapsed tunnels onto armored squads, left false trails that lured elite hunters into traps improvised from environmental hazards. Our fleet believed they were facing an elite regiment, a specialized task force, an entire underground battalion, until reconnaissance finally captured a clear visual, and the truth spread through our ranks like a plague. It was one human. One. And the moment we realized that, the fear began. The kind that corrodes nerve and logic alike. Because if one wounded human could hold off an entire invasion force, what would happen if humanity truly prepared for war? The projection ended abruptly, plunging the vault into a heavy, suffocating quiet. Even now, centuries later, I felt my membranes trembling. The old treaty had not been drafted to protect humans. It had been drafted to protect everyone else. No weapons for humans in political halls, no armaments entrusted to their unpredictable adaptability, no provocation, no deceit, no second Orion campaign. I turned to the human beside me, ready for anger or accusation or condemnation. They gave none. Instead, they exhaled slowly, as though connecting missing pieces of a puzzle they had long suspected. "So that's why," they murmured. No judgment, no fury, just understanding. Somehow, that terrified me more than any weapon ever could. The Grand Assembly had transformed while we were gone, where once there was careful order, now a tense electric charge filled the chamber. Whispers had escalated into accusations, questions laced with fear. Delegates demanded explanations, reparations, assurances, each word sharper than a vibroblade. They feared what humans had just learned, and worse, what they might do with that knowledge. And there, in the center of it all, stood the human delegate, fragile, unarmed, almost ordinary, yet radiating a presence that dwarfed the tallest of species. Every gaze in the room seemed drawn toward them, caught in an invisible gravitational pull. The chair tried to regain control, raising the resonance gavel, voice trembling through the amphitheater. "Order! Please, this is not—" The human spoke first, softly, clearly, precisely. "We know what you fear," they said. The words carried not in volume, but in the clarity of their meaning, slicing through the room's rising panic. They spread their palms in a gesture of peace, ancient even by Earth standards. "You fear we are weapons." I leaned forward. Something in the tone unsettled me. Not aggressive, but sharpened, deliberate, undeniable. "Our strength," the human continued, "was never our capacity to destroy." A ripple passed through the assembly. Fear, awe, something deeper that defied name. "Take our weapons," the human said. "Every blade, every rifle, every instrument of war. It changes nothing. You cannot disarm will. You cannot regulate hope." The chamber fell utterly silent. In that silence, I understood the truth behind the ban and why it would never suffice. The galaxy could restrict our hands, our bodies, our tools, but never our resolve. The assembly, still trembling from the humans' words, demanded context. What was the source of this unyielding resolve? What had shaped humanity into being so alien in their persistence? The human delegates smiled and activated their personal archive. The hollow sky ignited above us, filling the chamber with light, but not images of warships or weapon schematics. Instead, it showed Earth. Cities swallowed by oceans, rebuilt by hands blistered from salt and sun. Streets emptied by plagues, yet humans tending the sick, refusing to abandon each other. Endless deserts crossed with nothing but will and determination. Frozen mountains climbed with bleeding fingers. Flames leaping from collapsing buildings, yet humans charging into the inferno to save strangers. The assembly murmured, this was not warfare, not conquest. It was something stranger, something elemental, evolutionary defiance made visible. Every species here, the human said, voice calm, resonant, was shaped by abundance or stability. I studied the recordings. The human body was weak, claws non-existent, skin thin, lifespan brief, and yet, time and again, they rose from falls that would have extinguished any other species. A Korth warlord's rumble broke the silence. The humans shook their head. No.
A pressure coiled in my thorax, admiration, fear, and something like awe interwoven. Humans were not unstoppable because they were strong. They were unstoppable because they refused to accept defeat as a concept. And that, the raw, unflinching, eternal refusal, was what terrified the galaxy most. I had hoped, naively, that the revelations already shown would satisfy the assembly, that the wars, the resistance, the impossible survival histories would be enough. But fear is a hungry thing, and now it demanded the marrow beneath the bone. Delegates leaned forward in their seats, frills flared, pupils dilated, mandibles tensed. What are humans truly? They pressed. What makes them so unkillable? The chair finally turned to me. Archivist. My throat tightened. There were files even I wished had stayed buried, files that had shaken the Triune scholars, reduced veterans to silence, made entire ethics councils resign. But denial now served no one. I unlocked the last seal. A hush swallowed the chamber as the hollow slate ignited, projecting a single human brain, alive, firing, drowning in a storm of impossible neural energy. The first gasps came from the Korth Empire. Their species prided itself on being war-born, yet their neural resonance patterns were slow embers compared to the supernova unfolding before us. The term rippled through the assembly like a seismic wave. Few had heard it, fewer understood it, but all could feel the wrongness of the image. The recording zoomed in, a human soldier under lethal threat, heart rate spiking, body failing. But the brain, the brain, was awakening, neurons firing in lattices never seen in any other species, cognitive pathways growing in real time, structures rewiring not over generations, not over years, but seconds. It was evolution happening mid-battle. This is impossible, hissed a Varathi biologist. For all known species, I agreed. I gestured to the next sequence. A simulation overlay appeared, mapping human neurochemistry under duress. Observe how fear is rerouted, pain suppressed. Delegates recoiled as the model displayed a human's neural response to mortal danger. Prefrontal cognition surged. Long-term memory access accelerated. Problem-solving capacity multiplied. Creativity, weaponized creativity, spiked into inhuman territory. It isn't adrenaline, I continued. It's something older. The projection shifted again. Battlefield footage. A lone human pinned behind debris, bleeding, half-conscious. Yet with every injury, their neural activity intensified, adapted, refined itself into something frighteningly efficient. This is why trauma doesn't break them, I whispered. A horrified murmur spread. Some delegates shut their eyes, as if seeing too much. Others leaned closer, unable to look away. Weapons bans were not implemented because humans were strong, I said.
I displayed the next recording, tactical simulations showing a wounded human outperforming elite strategists, innovating on the fly with impossible speed. They develop new combat strategies in real time, meaning they cannot be outmaneuvered, the Jalari ambassador breathed. Not for long, I confirmed. A delegate asked, hopeful. I shook my head. A frozen silence. Human trauma hardened into lifelong upgrades. Human suffering produced smarter, faster survivors. Human near-death experiences forged leaders and legends. We didn't need to imagine. The projections displayed it for us. Generation after generation gaining instinctive strategic memory, passing hypercognitive tendencies as cultural inheritance, building societies where adversity wasn't exceptional, it was expected. Yes, I answered, because a human with a blade is not simply dangerous. They grow more capable with every wound. They become stronger with every failure. The chamber trembled, not from sound, but from realization. They had feared human violence. They had feared human ferocity. But this was something deeper. Humans were biologically designed to rise from their own ashes, smarter than before. The hollow sky dimmed. Silence lingered, heavy and terrified. In that void, the human delegate finally spoke. Their voice was calm, almost gentle. "We don't become monsters in war," they said. And somehow, that was the most terrifying thing of all, because at last I understood. The Galactic ban was never about controlling humans. It was about limiting the conditions that turned them into their ultimate form. The true fear was not that humans might start a war. It was that once begun, humans would finish it. We were still drowning in the terror of the final revelation when the chamber lights turned blood red. Warning sigils strobed across the dome ceiling. The floor thrummed with the vibration of planetary defense grids activating. Then the alarm boomed through every sensory membrane in the assembly. Unidentified fleet breach.
Panic detonated instantly. Delegates surged from their seats, frills flaring, wings snapping open, tendrils curling in instinctive self-preservation. The Korth warlord drew his natural talons. The Jalari diplomat collapsed into a fear-induced hibernation spasm. Even the chair, ancient and dignified, trembled. A real threat was entering galactic space. No simulation, no projection, no historical echo. A fleet unlike any we recognized. Their energy signatures refracted like living crystal, their vessels shifting in geometric patterns that defied known physics. The chamber devolved into chaos. And then the human stepped forward, unarmed, small, outmatched by every predator in the room. Their voice cut through the pandemonium like gravity collapsing a star. The chair recoiled. "Absolutely not," snarled the Korth warlord, half accusation, half fear. Diplomats screamed overlapping protests. Every instinct in the chamber screamed no. But something in the human's tone froze even the bravest among us. "Your weapons will escalate this," they said softly. "Your fear will worsen it." My throat tightened. They turned toward me and smiled with a quiet, devastating certainty. The chamber fell silent, not out of trust, but because instinct recognized something in that smile, the expression of a species that had already survived the end of the world. Several times, we opened a channel. The invaders appeared as fractal silhouettes, crystalline beings emitting harmonic pulses that translated as a single message. "Surrender your systems." Entire delegations flinched. Our fleets were scattered, our defenses uncoordinated. Unity was a myth we had repeated so often we'd forgotten it had never truly existed. The chair's voice quivered as they attempted diplomacy. It failed. The invaders increased their demands. Several species submitted outright, broadcasting their capitulation across the channel. The human watched all of this with a calm that bordered on sacrilege. Then they stepped into the center of the holofield. "Greetings," they said, in a voice steady enough to anger the room. "We acknowledge your arrival. We acknowledge your strength." The crystalline invaders pulsed in confusion. The human continued. "We endure. We rebuild. We adapt." Their voice dropped lower, gentle yet carrying a warning older than stars. "Do not mistake peace for weakness. If you force war upon us, we will survive whatever you inflict."
The translation matrix rendered the silence that followed as a chorus of shifting tones, hesitation, calculation, recognition. The invaders conferred among themselves. Their fractal shapes blurred, then reformed into final symmetry. Withdrawal. No threats, no final demands, just a simple, undeniable conclusion. A species that cannot be broken, cannot be conquered. The channel closed. The chamber exhaled as one, a trembling, disbelieving release. But the humans simply stepped back, expression unreadable, as though saving the galaxy were merely expected.